Hey there, night owl. Or maybe it's morning for you and you've decided to fall asleep to the sound of a peasant sweating into hay. Either way, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Take a second, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Is it 1 a.m., 4 p.m. on a walk? Are you trying to nap during a lunch break? No one knows about. I won't tell. You're safe here. Now dim the lights. Find that perfect pillow angle that takes 10 minutes to discover and lasts 4 seconds. Maybe put on a fan if you've got one. If not, pretend you do. Tonight's story might make you feel the heat anyway. Because we're going somewhere sweaty, somewhere itchy, somewhere very, very medieval. Welcome to one of the hottest nights of the year, in a medieval village. You are not nobility. You are not a knight. There are no cool flagstones in your personal castle courtyard, no silk sheets, no ceiling fans. You are, my friend, a peasant. And tonight, your only battle is with the heat. And maybe your neighbor's goats. Let me introduce you to Alric, age 32, which in medieval peasant years places him firmly between old enough to know better and surprised to still be alive. Alric is currently lying on top of a straw mattress that has absorbed more summers than it's survived. He's shirtless, not by fashion, but necessity. His tunic is hanging on a wooden peg still damp from sweat, despite being washed 5 hours ago in the river, using soap made from ash and boiled regret. Alric's room. Well, calling it a room is generous. It's a corner of a one-room hut, shared with his wife, 2 children, and a chicken named Frigga, who does not believe in personal boundaries. The walls are made of wattle and daub, basically twigs and mud that hold together just well enough to keep the wolves out and the heat in. And on nights like this, it's like living inside a stale loaf of bread. The air is thick. Not metaphorically. Alric just tried to wave his hand in front of his face and felt the resistance. It's like moving through porridge. There's a breeze somewhere outside, but it refuses to enter the home, likely scared off by the smell. Because yes, Alric has bathed, sort of. But the combination of dried sweat, livestock, and the scent of boiled onions, which was dinner, breakfast, and probably lunch again, gives the air a kind of personality. And it's not just the heat. Oh no, the thatched roof above him, full of insects, full of insects, full them. They chirp, they buzz, they occasionally fall. Once last summer, a particularly bold beetle made it into Ulrich's ear while he was half asleep, and he ran screaming into the field like a man possessed. His neighbors never forgot. Neither did the beetle. It came back the next week, brought friends. So what did peasants like Alric do? How did they survive a night like this when you can't open a window because you don't have one, and sleep feels like an extreme sport? We're still gonna find out. Together. But first, take a deep breath. You're not in Alric's hut. You have blankets, air conditioning, a ceiling that does not drop beetles, maybe even a cat who respects your boundaries. Or not. But either way, you're doing fine. Now let's travel back to that world for a little while longer and figure out how people like Alric didn't melt. Let's talk solutions. Because our dear Alric, like many medieval peasants before him, wasn't the type to just suffer in silence. Well, he mostly suffered in silence. Occasionally he'd grumble loudly into the straw mattress, but that was just to assert dominance. On a sweltering night like this, survival wasn't just about enduring, it was about adapting, and maybe lying very still so you didn't accidentally combust. First strategy, the river escape. This one was bold, dangerous, popular among those who didn't mind being a little damp or eaten alive by mosquitoes the size of thumbtacks. Around dusk, Alric might drag his aching, sweaty body down to the riverbank, just a short walk past the miller's pig pen, and a long debate with himself about whether he was going to stub his toe again on that same cursed rock. At the river, he'd wade in up to his knees, maybe more, wearing a linen under tunic that now served as a medieval bathing suit. Was it clean? Not exactly. But it was cooler than his hut. And if you angled your body just right, the breeze off the water could trick your brain into thinking you were almost comfortable. Almost. The trick was not falling asleep in the river, because the river did not care. The river had claimed 3 villagers already this summer, including Widow Aldwin's cat, and for a terrifying moment, a very drunk baker who mistook it for his front step. But for Alric, it was worth the risk. 20 minutes in the cool water meant he could walk home soaked and shivering, 2 sensations that made him feel strangely alive. And for those brief, glorious minutes, the heat would leave him alone. But on nights when the river was crowded, or when the frogs were feeling particularly vocal, Ulrich turned to a second tactic. Let's call it the strategic nudity plan. No judgment here. It was practical. Once the children were asleep, and Frigga the chicken had retired to her perch, which was, unfairly, the coolest spot in the hut, Ulrich would remove everything he could get away with. He'd lie flat on his back, arms and legs stretched wide like a starfish trying to catch a breeze. And it had to be arms and legs wide. Everyone knew touching your own skin made it worse. If your thigh touched your other thigh, game over. The heat would multiply. You'd enter a new dimension of sweat. It was peasant science. His wife Elswith was less than thrilled about this particular pose, mostly because Alric snored loudly, and somehow the heat made it worse. She often described it as a pig choking on a harmonica, which was generous, honestly. But on nights like this, she didn't fight it. She just scooted a few feet away, cursed his ancestors, and tried to sleep near the door where the gap under the frame let in at least the idea of cooler air. And let's not forget the other tactic and underrated classic, leaving the hut entirely. Yes, outside. Ulrich and Elswith, like many of their neighbors, would sometimes drag a blanket, usually a scratchy, hay-infested square of wool, and lay it outside right on the dirt, maybe under a tree, maybe behind the shed, maybe wherever Frigga hadn't left a surprise. It wasn't luxury, but it was air. Real, moving, bug-filled, glorious air. They'd lie there staring at the stars, pretending they weren't worried about thieves, wolves, or old Thomas the Cartwright who walked in his sleep, and once tried to sell someone's goat by accident. They'd talk, softly, mostly complaints, sometimes memories, and once, just once, they laughed so hard about the beetle incident that Alric forgot about the heat entirely. And that said something, isn't it? Because in the end, peasants didn't survive hot nights through engineering, or ice, or grand invention. They survived by leaning on each other, by finding the breeze in small places, by laughing in the dark when it was too hot to sleep and too human not to try. Now, while Ulrich perfected the art of lying very still and pretending not to exist, other villagers developed their own unique methods for surviving the sweat-drenched nightmare that was a medieval heat wave. Some were clever, some were weird, and some were, frankly, a cry for help. Let me introduce you to Editha. Editha lived just down the path from Alric and Elswith. She was 47, childless, sharp-tongued, and widely believed to be either a witch or the only reasonable person in the village. Possibly both. She was the kind of woman who, if you passed her on the road, would greet you with a smile, then immediately tell you what was wrong with your gait, your posture, and your marital choices. And she was never wrong. Now, Editha had a secret weapon against the heat. She called it the night soak. Every evening, just before sunset, she'd take a woven sack, an old grain bag with the name of a long-dead landlord still stitched into the corner, and she'd dunk it in the village well, fully, until it was dripping and heavy like the guilt of a middle child. Then she'd bring it back home, wring it out slightly but only slightly, and lay it over her sleeping mat like a blessed gift from the gods. She'd lie under it, not fully covered, just enough to keep her skin from igniting. And for those first 10 minutes, it was heaven. Cold, wet, slightly fungal, but glorious. Of course, after 10 minutes it warmed up and began to smell like pond. But Editha didn't care. Better swamp sleep than sweat sleep, she'd say. And honestly, she had a point. And while we're on the subject of medieval wisdom, let's talk pillows, or rather, the absence of them. Most peasants didn't sleep with pillows as we think of them. Alric used a sack filled with straw, sometimes mixed with herbs like lavender or thyme, to mask the scent of everything else. On a hot night, however, he'd empty the sack entirely and sleep on the wooden headboard, face first, like a very uncomfortable plank of salted fish. It didn't help much, but it gave him a sense of control, and that was worth something. Then there was Leofric, the village shepherd. Now, Leofric was a man of few words and fewer teeth, but he had one trick that even Editha had to begrudgingly admire: cold stones. That's right. Around dusk, Leofric would walk down to the stream, pick out a few smooth round stones and place them in a clay bowl. Then he'd leave that bowl outside in the shade all evening. When night came, he'd bring the cool stones to bed and set them around his body like he was trying to summon a very confused spirit. He swore it worked, said it drew out the heat, and maybe it did. Or maybe lying still while cradling river rocks just distracted him from the fact that he lived in a wooden box with a hole for a window and a chicken that pecked him when he snored. Still, it was oddly comforting, like having tiny judgmental companions made of granite. And that, dear listener, is the beauty of these stories. Because every peasant had a trick, a method, a habit passed down, invented, or stumbled upon while half naked and desperate. And every one of them said the same thing: this heat tall pass, it always does. Until then, they soaked. They lay in doorways. They slept beside pigs, because pigs had better airflow, and somehow they made it to morning. Let's pause here for a second. You, right now listening to this, tucked under your blanket, maybe in bed, maybe on a couch that dips in the middle like a reluctant hammock, you have options. You can open a window, you can turn on a fan, you might even have one of those little noise machines that makes fake rain sounds, which honestly feels like cheating at bedtime in the best way. But medieval peasants, they had something else entirely. They had the communal collapse. Picture this: it's late. The moon is up. The village is quiet except for the distant sound of someone regretting onion soup. And in the field just beyond the hay barns, 5 to 10 peasants are lying side by side on a big wool blanket, like badly arranged firewood, doing absolutely nothing. No one's talking. No one's moving. They're all just trying to exist as quietly and flatly as possible. Why? Because heat didn't care about your pride, and on the hottest nights of the year, even personal space got downgraded. Sometimes a few families would drag their bedding out into the common green. Someone would bring a pail of water to splash over their feet. Someone else might bring a crust of bread, not to eat, just to hold in case they needed emotional support. And they'd lie there together, staring at the sky, counting stars, swatting flies, occasionally farting and pretending they didn't. It was, in a strange way, community. Not the organized kind. Not a feast or a wedding. Just the quiet comfort of suffering together. And every village had that one person who handled the heat worse than anyone else. In Alric's village it was Wulfric the Thatcher, a man built like a loaf of bread and cursed with the body heat of a dying sun. He couldn't sit still. He'd roll back and forth in the grass like a freshly cooked sausage. Too hot for sleeping, he'd declare to no one in particular. Too hot for breathing. Then he'd take off his tunic, flap it above his head like a sweaty flag of surrender, and pace in circles until someone threw a bucket of well water at him, which only encouraged him. But Wulfric was also the guy who, halfway through the night, would hum a song under his breath, soft, low, a little off-key, and suddenly 3 others would join in. Just a few notes, nothing rehearsed, nothing pretty, just sound. And in the middle of the hottest night of the year, with sweat sticking to your skin, and grass poking you in places grass should never poke, you'd realize something. This was survivable. Because you weren't set doing it alone. And maybe that's why they got through it. No fans, no ice, just people, blankets, stars, and a shared understanding that sometimes you just needed to outlast the night. As we drift deeper into the night, the village grows quieter. The chickens finally give up their commentary. The dogs lie flat, like rugs. Even the frogs have stopped screaming long enough for the crickets to take over. But inside the huts, the battle with the heat isn't over. It just gets stranger. Let's go back to Alric. Around midnight, he's still awake, lying on his back, eyes open, one leg dangling off the side of the bed, in the desperate hope that gravity will cool his ankle. Spoiler, it won't. Elswith, his wife, has rolled herself into a corner with her back to him, muttering in her sleep about root vegetables. Frigga the chicken is directly on his chest. Again, Elsric doesn't know how she got there. He never does. She just appears like a judgmental ghost who smells like feathers and wheat. Unable to sleep and unwilling to admit defeat, Alric tries something bold. He gets up, not to go to the river, not to join the communal peasant pile outside. No, he's got an idea. He grabs a wooden bowl, fills it with water from the barrel in the corner, and very slowly dips a cloth into it. He then wrings it out with great ceremony and far too much noise and places the damp fabric over his forehead. The effect is immediate, cold, beautiful, slightly slimy, but still cold. He closes his eyes, sighs dramatically. Frigga clucks once in protest. And then, finally, Alric begins to fall asleep. For 5 whole minutes. Until the cloth warms up and clings to his face like a very affectionate mushroom. Still, 5 minutes of bliss is 5 more than he expected. It stops the small victories. And that saps really the point. Isn't it? Surviving the heat wasn't about staying cool. That wasn't possible. Not really. There was no escape. No air conditioning. No magic medieval popsicle. What there was, however, was creativity. Someone would build a fan from bundled straw and wave it for 20 seconds before collapsing from exhaustion. Someone else would sleep with their feet in a bucket of water, hoping that cold toes would trick the rest of the body into behaving. A few even claimed garlic paste on the wrists helped. No science. Just the vague belief that if it didn't cool you down, at least no one would come near enough to make it worse. And when all else failed, you lay there, thinking about snow, about winter, about frost, about how, just a few months ago, you would have done anything to be warm. And now, here you were, willing to trade your soul for a breeze. Sleep, when it came, was shallow, patchy. You dreamed of shade, of rivers, of clouds that refused to leave. But in the morning, you woke up, hot, sticky, tired, but alive, and sometimes that was enough. Morning doesn't arrive in a gentle, poetic way in Alric's village. It punches through the slats in the door like a drunk cousin, showing up too early for a feast. The sun beams directly into Alric's swollen, sleep-deprived face, and for a moment he forgets who he is, or where he is, or why his chest smells faintly of chicken. Then Frigga squawks from beside him, flaps once and hops off the bed like she owns the lease. And just like that, the heat is back. It never really left, of course. It just took a brief nap while the stars were out. Alric sits up, hair stuck to the side of his face, eyes half glued shut from dried sweat, and a questionable amount of onion-based dreams. He swings his legs over the edge of the bed, stands, immediately regrets it, and mumbles something that might be a curse or a prayer. It's unclear. His wife Elswith is already up outside, likely muttering into a bucket of laundry that won't dry because the humidity is plotting against her. Alric picks up the cloth he used last night, gives it a sniff, nearly passes out, and throws it in a corner for future archaeological study. Outside, the village is already moving. Slowly, deliberately, people are walking like their limbs are made of molasses and spite. The blacksmith is fanning himself with an old pan lid. The thatcher has given up entirely and is lying face down in the dirt with a wet rag across his back and a look of betrayal on his face. Children chase each other half-heartedly, only because sitting still makes them feel old. A few villagers gather at the well, not to talk, just to hover near the water like thirsty ghosts. And that sets when Alric sees it. The communal barrel. Once every few weeks, when the heat gets truly unbearable, someone rolls out the old barrel from behind the alehouse. It's cracked, smells faintly of fermented carrots, and is filled with cold well water and old wives' tales. Eric watches as Wulfric the Thatcher dunks his head into the barrel and lets it stay there a suspiciously long time. Then he pulls back, gasping like a man reborn. Cold as sin, he declares. Feels like being punched by winter itself. One by one, villagers line up. No rules, no formality, just heat, desperation, and a vague understanding that if they don't cool off soon, they're going to melt into their own shoes. Alric joins the queue, and when it sits his turn, he doesn't hesitate. He plunges his face, arms, and half his torso into the barrel like it owes him money. The water shocks him. It bites. It soothes. It fills his ears with the quiet he's been looking for. He stays like that, half submerged, for just long enough to feel human again. And as he pulls back, dripping, heart thumping, eyes wide, he laughs, actually laughs, because it worked. Because for the first time in days, the heat doesn't win. Alric walks away from the barrel like a new man. A very soggy, slightly wheezing man, but still new. His tunic clings to his body in the worst possible way, giving him the appearance of a drowned cabbage. But he doesn't care. The barrel gave him a glimpse of salvation. For 30 seconds he'd remembered what it was like to feel not sweaty. And that was enough to make him believe again. Back at his hut, Elswith raises an eyebrow as he squelches through the doorway. "Fall in the well?" she asks. Barely glancing up from the pile of turnips, she's angrily cutting for a stew that's going to taste like suffering. "Barrel," he says. "The big one." She nods. "You smell like the brewery sip's armpit." He grins. But a cool armpit. Outside, the day trudges on. The sun hangs in the sky like it's trying to prove a point. No clouds, no mercy. The goats have all flopped on their sides like abandoned coats. Frigga has buried herself in a bucket of dry hay and refuses to emerge unless bribed. But even so, something shifts. A mood. The peasants of the village, sweaty, underslept, and absolutely done with summer, begin to move with a sense of defiant hope. Someone starts fanning others with an old bread paddle. Another drags a damp linen sheet onto a shaded bench and calls it the cooling throne. Children are seen placing pebbles in their mouths because it feels like ice. It doesn't, but let them dream. And the laughter. Oh, there sits laughter now. Half the village is delirious from dehydration. Sure, but still, they're laughing. At the absurdity of it. At the sight of Wulfric building a sunshade from 2 pitchforks and a tunic that definitely doesn't belong to him. At how Alric keeps squeezing water from his sleeves and calling it miracle juice. And here sits the thing about that kind of laughter. It doesn't fix the heat, but it makes it bearable. Because survival, for a medieval peasant, was never about being comfortable. It was about enduring together, sweating beside people you knew too well, sharing water, sharing shade, sharing soup. That's 90% onion and 10% disappointment. Finding a reason to smile when the sun won't stop punishing you. And every evening, as the light fades and the stars return, the heat lifts just a little, just enough. and that seps when they know they made it through one more day. The sun finally dips below the hill, like it's decided to give everyone a break after playing too aggressively all day. A breeze wanders through the village, uninvited but forgiven, stirring the hanging herbs and the fraying laundry like a sigh across the rooftops. Alric, now mostly dry and only mildly crusty, stands outside his hut, watching the horizon dim. His hands are on his hips, his eyes half closed, and his expression carries the solemn pride of a man who didn't exactly do anything heroic today, but managed not to die of heat stroke, which frankly counts as a victory. Elswith joins him, carrying a small clay cup filled with something vaguely drinkable. It's seps made from boiled bark, river mint, and a tiny bit of fermented berry mash. Summer tea, she calls it, for when the heat makes water feel boring. She hands him the cup. He drinks. It is absolutely disgusting, but it's cold, and it tastes like effort, and that's what matters. Around them, villagers begin to do what they always do once the air cools: return to life. People reappear from the shade like cautious lizards. Someone starts plucking a lute that's missing 2 strings. Someone else is fanning themselves with a dead fish, which is deeply questionable, but no one has the energy to judge anymore. A few children lay in the grass and try to name constellations based on livestock. That one fits the chicken. That sits not a chicken. That sits a boot. Chickens can look like boots, you don't fit no. And as the stars multiply, the temperature finally slips below. Why is my knee sweating? Levels. A few villagers stretch out blankets near the communal well again. Others sit on stools, passing around cups of tepid ale and trading stories they've told before, but now find hilarious again. Because that's how memory works when your brain's been slightly cooked all day. Alric and Elswith sit together in the grass, side by side, sharing the rest of the tea and listening to the low hum of the village settling into its bones. A dog wanders by and sits directly on Alric's foot, which is rude but also warm in a good way. Frigga eventually emerges, ruffled but undefeated, and perches on Elswith's lap like she didn't spend the entire day hiding from the concept of sunlight. And somewhere in that quiet, without even realizing it, everyone starts to breathe a little easier. Because this is what makes the heat survivable. Not tricks, not barrels, not damp tunics or stones tucked under your armpits, but the people beside you, the ones fanning your face with a crust of bread, the ones humming songs that don't exist, the ones still laughing at your beetle incident years later. And if you listening to this right now, maybe sweating a little under the blanket, or maybe not sweating at all and just smiling softly in the dark, you hurt part of that too. The stars are brighter now, clear and sharp in that way only villages with no torchlight and no ambition for nightlife ever get to enjoy. No bonfires tonight, no dancing, no loot-fueled shouting matches over who last stole whose chicken. Just the sky, the slow chirping of insects, and the sound of people finally getting still. In Zax likes it, Rick lies flat on his back in the grass, arms tucked behind his head, one foot gently nudging Frigga off his shin every few minutes. She's clingy in the evenings. It's not emotional, it's temperature related. She's convinced he's cooler than the dirt. Elswith beside him, wrapped in a blanket that's more whole than cloth. They're not talking much, just breathing together. After a day like today, words feel like extra heat. Across the green, someone starts humming again. Same tune as last night, or maybe the night before. No one knows who started it originally. No one cares. It's slow, a little off-key and kind of perfect. One by one, others join in. No lyrics, just sound. And if you were to walk past the village right now, a stranger on the road, a traveler with no map, you'd hear it and wonder if you'd stumbled on some forgotten tradition, some midsummer rite. But there's no ritual here, no spell, just peasants, hot, sweaty, excruciatingly tired. and deeply, stubbornly alive. Wulfric, now shirtless and using a bucket of dirt as a pillow, raises one hand in the air and declares, "We survived another one." No one cheers. They stature too exhausted. But a few mutter, "Aye." One person claps, once. Frigga makes a sound that might be agreement. And that sep's enough. Because tomorrow will be hot too. Maybe worse. Maybe not. But now, with your limbs stretched out and the sky wide above you, you Bolzer earned this night. You Dev endured it. You Fairs shared it. And maybe, just maybe, you've reminded yourself what it means to endure something together. So if you're listening to this right now, still with me, still drifting, let that sink in. And sleep well, wherever you are. By now, most of the village has gone quiet again. The humming has faded into the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels earned. The kind that comes after a day of work, sweat, shared looks, shared water, and the decision, over and over again, not to give up. You can almost hear the grass settling, the last fireflies blinking their goodnights. Even the air, thick as it's been all day, seems to have finally forgiven everyone. Alric has drifted off. Not all the way, just enough. The kind of half-sleep where your ears still listen, your foot still twitches, and you're aware that you left one arm out of the blanket, and now it's suspiciously damp. Elswith's already gone. She always falls asleep first. Years of raising children and chasing runaway chickens taught her how to sleep like a stone the moment her eyes close, even in heat, even in chaos, even when Alsric mumbles nonsense in his dreams about oversized potatoes and angry geese. Frigga, for once, has taken the hint and wandered off to her corner of the coop, probably scheming, or sweating, or both. The moon is high now, big, soft. The kind of moon that makes you want to stay awake, just to look at it a little longer, even though your body is crying out for sleep, and your brain is melting slightly from the inside. And somewhere out there, in another hut, Editha turns over in her bed and mutters, "Still hot." She flings a corner of her blanket off, like she sits throwing shade at the stars themselves. Tell your moon to do something useful for once. She falls back asleep instantly. But her words hang in the air. Because yes, sometimes it feels like the world is just watching you sweat. But other times, like tonight, you start to believe it might actually be watching over you. And for all the discomfort, the stickiness, the weird smells and worse sounds, there's something real here. Something ancient, something honest. People surviving together. Lying in doorways, grass barns, and between crumbling walls. Singing off-key, sharing the shade, making jokes in the dark. They didn't conquer the heat. Not really. But they endured it with cracked smiles and sleepy hope. And that's more than enough. The night has stretched itself thin now, like it's exhaled everything it had and is just waiting for morning to take over. The kind of hour where the stars feel closer and your thoughts move slower, not because they're any less complicated, just because you're too tired to chase them at full speed. Alric stirs slightly, not from discomfort, from habit. A kind of sleep that isn't entirely trusting. He rolls onto his side, arm under his head, knees pulled slightly in like a man trying to fold himself into a cooler shape. Elswith's hand, half asleep, finds his shoulder, a small squeeze, then stillness again. Around the village, a few lanterns flicker in windows, not for light, just comfort. A candle left burning to say, "We stir still here," a glow that says, "Yes, the roof leaked. Yes, the heat is awful, but the house stood, and we stir inside it." The well creaks once in the breeze. A rooster stirs early, then thinks better of it, and goes quiet again. And that's when it happens. The first breath of truly cool air. It slips in like a secret. A breeze that rolls gently across the dirt, over the fence posts, beneath the door frames. It's not dramatic. It doesn't demand attention, but everyone feels it. A shift, a gift. Alric, still half asleep, exhales like a man who's just been told he's forgiven. His fingers twitch. His jaw relaxes. The worst of the heat has passed. Not completely, but enough to matter. The village, for the first time in days, breathes as one. Even Editha, ever the skeptic, lies in her hut with the corners of her mouth curled up ever so slightly. About time, she mutters. Outside, a few of the children sleeping in the grass turn onto their backs, arms splayed wide like they're making invisible snow angels. One starts whispering in her sleep, something about a castle made of ice and goats that talk. No one wakes her, because in that moment the dream is a gift. And so is the air. And so is the quiet. And if you, listening now, are still awake, let this be your breeze. Let it pass over you. Let it remind you that the hard part of the day is done. And tomorrow, we tell sweat again, complain again, survive again. But for now, sleep. Sometime just before dawn, the village slips into its softest state. Even the animals stop fidgeting. The hens sit still. The dogs curl tighter. The cows stop complaining, as if they too are grateful for the cool hush that now wraps around everything like a worn cotton sheet. The night is no longer a battle. It's a lullaby. Alric, usually a light sleeper with the reflexes of a man who's had one too many surprise goat stampedes, is deep under, mouth open, one arm over his face, legs splayed like he lost a wrestling match with gravity and just accepted it. And for once, he's not sweating. Elswith hasn't net moved in hours. Not because she's uncomfortable, but because she's finally found the perfect spot, the one square of fabric that isn't sticking to her and the one angle that doesn't feel like sleeping in soup. She's not about to risk that by adjusting. She's smarter than that. Somewhere outside, Wulfric has shifted onto his side in the grass, and now has a small toad sleeping in the crook of his elbow. He doesn't know. He won't know. And when he wakes up and sees it, he'll probably assume it's a good omen and name it something deeply unwise, like King Gilbert. Even Frigga the chicken has given in. She's nestled on top of the hay pile in a little hollow she made herself. Wings fluffed out, beak tucked, dreaming whatever strange things chickens dream about, possibly breadcrumbs, possibly vengeance, probably both. A hot night came, and it didn't win. The peasants? They didn't defeat the heat. They didn't outsmart it with gadgets or clever science. They just lived through it, with each other, with sweat, with bad tea, damp blankets, and conversations whispered at midnight. And now, they've made it to the edge of morning. So if you're still awake now, drifting, blinking slow, listening with one ear and dreaming with the other, let this be the quiet part of your story too. You've done enough. The heat is passing, and the world is turning gently, just for you. The morning arrives like a polite guest. No thunder, no fanfare, just light, soft, golden, almost embarrassed to be here. It pours in through the gaps in the shutters, rests on the thatch, creeps across the dirt floors like it's checking in on everyone who survived the night. Alric wakes first, blinking up at the ceiling like he's not entirely sure which century it is. He stretches slowly, carefully, as if the air might shatter. His joints crack one at a time, ankle, then hip, then that one shoulder that always makes a noise like an old gate. But he's not rushing, not today. He turns his head. Elswith is still asleep, and he doesn't awake her. Not because he's afraid, but because he knows she's earned every second of rest she can get. Besides, she looks peaceful, her face half lit by the morning sun, one hand curled into a fist, like she's prepared to punch the next heat wave that dares visit. He gets up. His legs argue, briefly. His back files a formal complaint, but he moves. Outside, the village is quiet. The kind of quiet that holds the smell of dew and the sound of nothing in particular, Just a few birds, a cartwheel creaking somewhere, maybe a cough. It's not cold, but it's cooler. That blessed, soft kind of cool that makes your skin feel like it's forgiven you. Alric walks to the well. Not because he has to, but because it's how he marks the start of a day. He nods to Editha, who's already up and sitting on her stool like a gargoyle, who's seen everything and still isn't impressed. "Still alive?" she asks, without looking at him. "Barely," he replies. "You?" "That 47, and made of spite," she says. They sit in silence, a comfortable one. Wulfric passes by, shirt miraculously back on, hair wild, carrying a small frog with reverence. "Meet Sir Gilbert," he announces proudly. Neither of them ask, because it's morning, and it's quiet, and the worst has passed. And that sets what matters. So if you're still listening now, resting in your own quiet space, maybe your eyes already closed, you're breathing deep, the worst of your own day behind you, let this moment be yours. Like Alric Sep's first deep breath. Like Elswith sits dream still resting on her face. Like the village that endured, together. You made it too. The village begins to stir. Not all at once, but in ripples. A door creaks open. A bucket clangs softly against a stone. Somewhere, a baby begins to cry, and then promptly stops when offered a corner of bread to chew on. The world doesn't rush. It unfolds. Alric returns from the well with a wooden ladle filled with fresh water, splashes it over his face, and gasps like a man baptizing himself in cold hope. He drinks, hands still dripping, eyes closed. Elswith appears in the doorway, hair tied back with a bit of old linen, eyes squinting against the early light. She does instead speak, just takes the ladle from his hand, drinks slowly, and hands it back. It's Stit's their version of good morning. Frigga follows, of course, pecking the dirt and already searching for the nearest unattended breakfast. She's a menace, but she's their menace. And Editha, of course Editha, is already muttering about how no one remembers to sweep properly anymore. She waves a broom with such authority that 3 people sweep their own steps out of sheer instinct. Wulfric is giving a passionate speech to Sir Gilbert the Frog about how frogs don't get hot because they've figured it all out. No one interrupts him. It seems important. But even with all the familiar noise, there's something different in the air. Lighter. Because last night they made it through. The hottest night, the sweatiest stretch of hours, the stickiest, loudest, most sleep-deprived fever of a summer's grip. And they didn't do it with clever inventions or noble magic. They did it by sharing the shade, by dunking their heads into barrels, by swatting mosquitoes for each other, and laughing about the smell of onion tea, and maybe by not doing it alone. So as the bread bakes and the chickens yell and the air begins slowly to warm again, they all know one thing. Tonight might be hot again, but they'll be ready, together. And you, listener, you made it too. Through the story, through the dark, through the sweat and the stars and the frog, now named Sir Gilbert. You fear part of this little village now. You know how to survive the hottest nights. By mid-morning, the village is in full motion again, but at a pace only heat survivors truly understand. Everything is slower, deliberate. The children are playing in the dirt. Yes, but half-heartedly. They move like they're conserving energy for something important. Like another night of turning into puddles. The adults are doing what adults always do, working while pretending they're not still exhausted. Alric is patching a bit of roof, balanced on a shaky ladder, muttering to himself about how thatch doesn't grow on trees, which makes no sense. But he's not here to be scientifically accurate. He's here to keep the sun out of his wife's face during dinner. Elswith is below him, hands on her hips, occasionally shouting helpful things like, "You missed a spot, and that looks like it'll collapse on us again," in the tone of someone who absolutely loves you, but also wishes you came with instructions. Wulfric, of course, has given Sir Gilbert a throne. It's a bucket turned upside down with a beetle shell as a crown. Editha said it was ridiculous. Then she added a cape made from a lettuce leaf. No one is quite sure what's happening there anymore. A merchant wanders through the village road with a cart full of cloth and not much else. He's trying to sell handkerchiefs as cooling veils and has already been shouted at by 3 grandmothers. But he'll try again at the next village. Hope is a powerful motivator when your feet are covered in blisters and your cart wheel squeaks like an angry ghost. And somewhere, under a small patch of shade beside the mill, a few elders are sitting together on a bench that groans louder than they do. One of them, an old man with eyebrows longer than his patience, leans back and says, "Remember the summer of 609. There sits a pause, then a chorus of groans. Don Tet speak of it," one mutters. "That was the year the cows passed out, and the fish boiled themselves, and my beard caught fire. Did not. Felt like it." They laugh, weak but real. Because that's what happens after a long night. You remember. You talk, you share the same 5 stories with the same 10 people, and somehow it feels brand new again. And that saps the soul of it. Isn't it? Surviving the heat wasn't set about escaping it. It was about building tiny, ridiculous, beautiful rituals. Damp blankets, barrel baths, sleep piles, frog nights. And if you stir still listening now, curled up, heavy-eyed, floating gently between waking and dreaming, you are part of it too. You 4 lying beneath the same stars, drifting through the same breeze, smiling at the same tired jokes. You bev survived the heat. Now it's time to rest in the calm that follows. Afternoon leans over the village like a lazy cat, warm, sprawling, and entirely uninterested in your productivity. The sun isn't set angry anymore. It's set just smug. The kind of heat that says, "Oh, you thought last night was bad? Let's see how you handle 2 p.m. But no one panics. Not now. Because the villagers know the dance by heart. They've folded into it. Like dough rising too slow, like tea steeping too long. They adapt. Alric has moved inside. His roof-patching efforts were noble, but after nearly falling off the ladder twice and being dive-bombed by an angry crow, he's decided it can wait. He's sitting near the open door now, shirt off, arms resting on his knees, staring at the floor like it owes him an apology. Elswith is grinding herbs at the table, elbow deep in what she swears is a cooling remedy, and not just another excuse to avoid the stew pot. This one, she explains with absolute confidence, is made from elderflower, mint, and the tears of a woman who's just cleaned her floors for the 3rd time. Alric nods. Sounds medicinal. That's revenge, she replies. But yes, medicinal revenge. Outside, the village is quiet again. Not asleep, just in hibernation. Half the people have collapsed under the nearest tree. Others have retreated to their homes, windows wide open, or window holes if we're being historically accurate. You'd think the heat would make everyone grumpy, and it does, but it also slows them down enough to laugh about it. Wulfric is trying to invent a fan powered by goats. Sir Gilbert the frog has been placed in a bowl of water for hydration and royal pleasure. A small child is parading through the road with a flower crown on, shouting, "I am the Queen of Shade," and honestly, she deserves the title. The kind that only comes when no one's pretending to be anything other than tired. The kind that says, "We stetrol in this, and we stetrol get through it, again, together." So, if your eyes are heavy now, if the world has quieted down around you, if the hum of your room feels like a lullaby made just for you, let it hold you, like the village held its own. Like Alric lying beside the doorway, finally cooling. Like Elswith with her herbs and her quiet smile. Like everyone who survived the hottest night and still had the strength to laugh the next day. You are part of it now. As the sun begins its slow descent, lower now, more golden than white hot, the village breathes again. Not a sigh, something deeper. That slow, silent knowing that comes when the worst is behind you and you're still here. Not perfect, not dry, but still standing. Alric's back at the door, watching the dust float in the warm air. You know that kind of dust. The kind that dances in shafts of light like it's trying to perform. He doesn't swat it away. He watches it like it's telling a story only he remembers. Elswith sits beside him now, shoulders touching, saying nothing. Not because there's nothing to say, but because they've said enough today. They've complained, joked, survived. And now, in this moment, their silence feels full. Frigga hops up on the step and fluffs her feathers like she just returned from war. A beetle falls out of her wing. She does not flinch. From somewhere in the center of the village, a low murmur rises. Someone tuning a broken lyre. Someone else humming a song with no words. The tune carries over the rooftops like a secret on holiday. Even Editha, leaning against her doorway with a bowl of something she won't share, taps her foot. The village doesn't feel like it did this morning. Exhausted, heavy, wiped out by the sun's tantrum. No, it feels like something has cracked open, like the heat burned everything that didn't matter and left behind only what did. Shared bread, cool water, shady spots, dumb jokes, and people you can sweat beside and still love anyway. Wulfric strolls by holding a spoon like a royal scepter. Sir Gilbert has requested a second bucket. No one questions it. The children are drawing shapes in the dirt again, building houses from twigs, and pretending to sell them to each other for leaves. One declares bankruptcy, the other opens a second tavern. It's unclear what the economy is, but business seems to be booming. And above all of it, the light grows soft and gold and forgiving. It doesn't undo the heat, or the sweat, or the miserable sleep they didn't get, but it offers something else. A gentle reminder that surviving wasn't just about what they endured, it was about who they endured it with. And you, wherever you are now, breathing quietly, listening with your whole self, you're part of that rhythm, part of that peace. And if the night ahead is warm or restless or a little too long, you already know how to make it through. Evening settles like an old blanket, frayed, familiar, and just soft enough to remind you that you're home. The shadows stretch across the village road, reaching over cracked wood, crooked fences, and the shallow footprints left by barefoot children now, long gone to chase something quieter. Alric is lighting a small candle. Not because he needs to, there's still enough light to see, but because it's what he does at this hour. He lights it, sets it near the window, and watches the flame flicker like it's alive and listening. Elswith lays out the evening bread. It's nothing fancy, just a few crusts, softened with a little goat's milk and thyme, but it smells like effort, like care, like something done not because it's special, but because it matters. They eat quietly. Every now and then, they trade a glance. Not romantic, not poetic, just real. The kind of look people share when they've lived inside the same heat, the same fatigue, the same bed full of straw and dreams and occasional feathers. Frigga, true to form, attempts to steal part of the crust. Ulrich swats the air near her with a practiced hand. She huffs and relocates to her perch, where she plots. Down the lane, Editha has brought out a small stool and placed it exactly 6 inches to the left of where she usually sits. When asked why, she simply says, "The air moves better here." No one argues. She's probably right. Wulfric is attempting to write a poem about the frog. It starts well. "Oh, noble Gilbert, frog of green," but he gets stuck after that. Possibly because Gilbert is now hopping in circles around his bowl like a knight mid-duel. The children have returned to their homes, dirt-streaked and full of stories that barely make sense but will be told anyway, again and again, for the next week. One of them claims she saw a cloud shaped like a turnip. Another swears a butterfly whispered her name. And above it all, the air has changed. It's no longer the weight of heat pressing on skin and spirit. It's something easier now, lighter, the kind of warmth you don't mind keeping. And as night arrives again, slower, softer than the one before, no one is afraid of it, because they've been through worse. And they still do it again, with bread, with laughter, with damp cloths and too many goats. And if you stare lying there now, tucked in just right, heart beating slow, the day behind you and sleep just ahead, know this, you pure in good company. Alric's dozing, Elswith sits humming, and even Frigga finally has decided to rest. The candle burns low now. Its glow is small, steady, and soft around the edges, like the kind of friend who doesn't speak much but stays until you're asleep. Elric watches it for a moment longer, eyes half-lidded, then gently cups the flame and breathes it out. Darkness folds into the room, not like an ending, but like a blanket being drawn up to the chin. Elswith's already curled on the bed, one arm under her head, the other stretched out like she's saving space for the next heat wave. Should it try anything tonight? Her breathing is slow, not silent. She snores. And they both know it, but steady, predictable. The kind of sound that lets you know everything's where it should be. Frigga, finally tired of her own chaos, has wedged herself into the corner behind the water jug. No one told her to. She just knew. Chickens, despite appearances, understand timing better than most people. Outside, the night hums. Not loudly, just enough to let you know the world hasn't ended. Crickets whisper, leaves shift. A breeze rustles the drying herbs that hang from doorways, brushing against them like old memories. Wulfric has gone quiet, too, probably asleep beneath the stars, arms around a bucket with Sir Gilbert perched beside him like a bodyguard, or possibly like a judge. It's hard to say with frogs. Editha's candle still flickers behind her window. Just one. She never sleeps early. She says someone has to watch the night, as if it's a guest who might try to steal the silverware. Truth is, she just likes the quiet, says it's the only time the village isn't trying to ruin itself with enthusiasm. And as the village settles, every door closed, every sigh released, you can feel the shift again. The day has gone. The heat has retreated. And peace, at long last, has crept back in. Not dramatic peace. Not the kind sung about by bards in castles. Just this, a dry patch of linen. A breath that doesn't stick in your lungs. A shared look. A soft blanket. A night without panic. So if you, lying there now, eyes closed or nearly there, need permission to rest, you have it. From Alric, from Elswith, from a chicken named Frigga and a frog in a bowl, from a village that has sweated and swatted and sung its way to sleep. You've done enough for one day, sometime deep into the night, when even the moon has started to dim and the stars look a little sleepy. The village falls into a kind of stillness that can only be described as sacred, not because of silence. Exactly. There are still sounds, always sounds, but none of them ask anything from you. The wind sighs through the grass. A barn creaks, tired but proud. An owl hoots once, just to say, yes, I then am here too. And in that stillness, something beautiful happens. Nothing. No disasters. No beetles in ears. No children shrieking about worms or goats breaking into the grain bin. Just rest. Alric turns in his sleep, mutters something about soup, and goes still again. Elswith shifts, reaches across the mattress, and finds his hand. Doesn't squeeze, just finds it, leaves hers there. Even Frigga seems content. She's made exactly 3 quiet chicken noises in the last hour, which is a personal record. The moonlight glints faintly off her feathers like she's been dusted in moon sugar. And Wulfric, yes, even Wulfric, sleeps soundly under the stars, his head on a sack of grass, a frog beside him, and a smile on his face that says, in his own unspoken way, we made it. Because that's what this story was always about. Not the heat, not the tricks, not the barrel dunks or the linen fans or the questionable herbal brews. It was about surviving something uncomfortable without letting it harden you. It was about looking someone in the eye and saying, "You hot too?" and laughing about it instead of hiding. It was about chickens, frogs, and crumb-covered kids running barefoot through dust and sunlight. It was about all the little things that made the big discomfort worth it. And now, with every lantern out, every snore in its rhythm, and every villager gently melting into dreams, the story rests, just like you should. So breathe in, slow. Let your shoulders fall. Let the room hold you. You sure not in a castle. You sure not a knight. But tonight, you share exactly where you share is supposed to be. At this hour, even time itself slows down. It forgets about minutes and hours and just lets everything exist in between. In that space where sleep isn't quite deep, and dreams haven't made up their minds yet. It's where Auric now floats. Somewhere between memory and fantasy, belly full of bread, skin finally cool. In his dream, he sits in a castle, but not a real one, not one built of stone and politics. This one's made of bread, soft, warm bread. He walks down a hallway where the walls are rye. The ceiling is oat-crusted, and every step echoes softly on a floor that smells like time and hope. There's even a gravy moat. It's very dignified. Elswith is there too, but she's wearing a crown made of cabbage and demanding someone invent an indoor breeze. Frigga is perched on a chandelier made of roasted garlic, pecking at passing sausages like she's finally achieved her destiny. Everyone is clapping for her. Outside the dream castle, Wulfric rides a giant frog through the fields, waving a banner that says "Cool Nights for All," yelling something about revolution and fans made of feathers. Gilbert, now the size of a cow, croaks majestically with the wisdom of 10 elders and the emotional range of a disappointed librarian. That's nonsense. But it sets good nonsense. And nonsense, when you're a peasant who's spent the last 3 days sweating through every layer of fabric you own, is exactly the kind of dream you need. Not logic, not ambition, just strange comfort. A way for the mind to loosen its belt and wander somewhere softer. Even Editha dreams, though she'd never admit it. Hers involves a perfectly swept floor and a council of chickens who finally do what they're told. It's a quiet dream, just the way she likes it. And out there in the dark where stories sleep and breath slows and even the owls start nodding off, the village holds these dreams like secrets. No one will speak of them, but everyone will wake up feeling slightly better. Because rest like this, after a night like that, it's duts, not just sleep. It's Set's reward. And if you, tucked into your own world, eyes heavy, limbs weightless, find yourself drifting toward your own version of a garlic chandelier, you're doing it right. Let the weird dreams come. Let them be full of frogs and fans and mildly confused nobility. Let them carry you through the night, because morning will come. But not yet. The dreams deepen now, turning richer, stranger, and just a little more ridiculous, because that's what happens when a peasant brain finally gets the chance to cool down. The mind, after sweating through its own thoughts for an entire day, decides it's earned a little nonsense. In Auric's dream, he's no longer in a bread castle. He's in a throne room made entirely of cheese. Hard cheese. Soft cheese. A wheel of something blue and suspicious is acting as his seat of power. A trumpet sounds, except it's not a trumpet. It's a goose. A very serious goose in a tiny velvet hat. The crowd cheers. Auric raises a spoon and declares, "Henceforth, All soup shall be chilled. It's his first decree as Dream King, and frankly, it's his best one yet. A child in the back throws flowers. Someone faints. Frigga, wearing chainmail, nods in approval. Elswith floats by on a boat made of turnips, completely unfazed. Meanwhile, Wulfric has reached the edge of the dream forest, where the trees grow fans instead of fruit, and a kind breeze tells him he's the chosen one. Gilbert the Frog, now wearing a monocle and speaking Latin, translates riddles about how to stay cool while herding sheep. None of them make sense, but they feel profound. Back in the real world, Alric shifts in his sleep and lets out a chuckle, a short one, just enough to show that his dream self is probably being knighted by a cabbage. The night outside stays quiet, still, kind. Dream Editha is walking through a perfectly swept marble courtyard, not a speck of dust in sight. Every villager she passes bows in admiration. One hands her a feather duster made of clouds. She doesn't smile. She simply nods, the way true queens do. And this is what the night becomes now. A place where sweat no longer sticks, where fans grow on trees, where goats ask for permission before barging into kitchens, where dreams feel not just weird, but deserved. Because after the kind of heat that makes even shadows feel warm, you need dreams like this. Silly ones, cool ones, ones that leave you smiling without knowing why. And you, wherever you are, tucked in with the weight of the day behind you, you are welcome here too, to dream your own strange dream of turnip boats, or snow falling on medieval rooftops, or just a cold glass of water that never runs out. Sleep well, dream freely. The village doesn't know it, but this is the best part of the night. That impossible hour just before morning, when the world feels like it's stopped turning, and everyone left in it seems to breathe at the same slow rhythm. Even the fireflies have gone quiet. The air has cooled, not completely, but enough to stop sticking to your skin, enough to let you forget that it ever did. Alric's breathing is deep now. His brow is smooth. He's in the kind of sleep that can't be interrupted by creaking wood or the rustle of straw. His dream has transitioned. He's no longer in the cheese throne room. Now he's swimming, but not in water, in pudding, cool, sweet, nonsensical pudding. And he's faster than he's ever been. He laughs in his sleep, just once. Elswith dreams too. She's in a meadow, where the air is crisp, and the chickens are polite. One hands her a folded fan and says, "You've earned it." She accepts without question. Even Frigga is dreaming, probably. Her eyes twitch slightly, and her claws flex, like she's reenacting a great battle, maybe against the shadow of a broom, maybe against gravity. It doesn't matter. In her tiny chicken mind, she's victorious. The huts are quiet. No shifting, no groaning, no one rolling over to find a cool spot because, for once, every spot is finally cool enough. The stars begin to fade just slightly, their light thinning like a song that knows its last verse is coming. Wulfric snores, loudly, but rhythmically, like a frog-shaped drum. Sir Gilbert rests beside him, unaware of the growing legend he's become. And Editha, she's still on her stool, head down, elbows on knees, a candle burned to the wick beside her, but her eyes are closed, and her lips are parted just enough to let a soft breath escape. She'll never admit she fell asleep outside, but tomorrow, her back will tell the truth. This is the kind of night that doesn't feel like one. It feels like a gift, given not by the weather, not by the wind, but by endurance itself, because they didn't beat the heat. They didn't outwin. They just kept going, and that somehow made room for rest. So if your body is heavy now, if your breathing is deep, if your pillow is just the right temperature for once, stay here. The hardest part is over. The stories are asleep, and so are you. The first color of the new day isn't blue or gold or even pink. It's gray, that soft, smoky gray that creeps in just before the sun thinks about rising. It drapes across the rooftops like mist too shy to settle, and wraps around the edges of doorways like a story trying not to wake anyone yet. It's a quiet invitation to return, not a command. Alric stirs, just slightly. A twitch of the fingers, a sigh, long and low. He's still dreaming, though the pudding is gone now, replaced by something gentler. Maybe a memory, softened by time. A riverbank, a breeze. A day before he knew what heat really felt like. Elswith's hand is still resting near his. She hasn't moved much either, her face turned toward the window, catching the faintest whisper of morning light. If you could look into her dream, you'd find her sitting beneath a tree, beside a garden that never needs weeding, where the air smells like mint and the shade never moves. And across the village, the stillness holds for just a little longer. Frigga rustles in her sleep pile. A single feather floats up and lands on her back like a medal of honor. She's made it. She knows it. She's smug about it, even in dreams. The breeze returns, soft and unbothered. It flows over the thatched roofs, beneath the barn doors, across the herb gardens and the firewood stacks, stirring only what's willing. It's not trying to wake anyone. It's just reminding them that time is still moving. Editha lifts her head. Not because of noise, not because of duty, but because some internal sense, fine-tuned over decades of surviving everything from bad rain to worse husbands, tells her that morning is close. She stands slowly, bones stiff, knees popping like corn. She picks up her broom because of course she does, and mutters, "Might as well start." And that sips the moment, the one that happens every day, but never quite the same. When sleep and morning trade places softly, carefully, so no one gets startled, and as the sky lightens from gray to something golden, the village begins to return. Not with alarm, not with shouting, just with the quiet certainty that they did it. Another hot night, survived. Another morning earned. And you, listening here, warm and calm and still, you made it through too. The sky is finally shifting now. That gentle stretch between gray and gold widens, and the first rays of real light peek over the hills like a child sneaking into a room it's not supposed to be in. Not bold, just curious. Alric's eyes open slowly, not with alarm, but with the quiet confusion of someone who expected to still be asleep. He doesn't move. He listens first. It's a habit, one carved deep by years of early chores, creaky roosters, and the occasional goat standing mysteriously on the roof. He hears nothing urgent, just the rustling of leaves. A few birds in a debate, the creak of Editha's broom handle against the cobblestones. Beside him, Elswith is still asleep, her hand now curled loosely beneath her chin, her brow peaceful. He won't wake her. Not yet. Let her have these extra few minutes. Let her stay in the garden in her dream, where the mint grows forever and the sun doesn't try to burn the whole sky down. He sits up slowly, stretching, until his spine gives a polite protest. The air is cool on his skin, not cold, but soft, forgiving, a reward more precious than gold, in a world where sleep is a gamble and comfort is seasonal. He stands barefoot on the cool earth floor and walks to the door. Outside, the village is beginning to glow. A pale light touches the tips of every rooftop. Someone stokes a fire. Someone else opens a window and pours out dishwater. It's all so simple, so deeply, stubbornly ordinary. And yet, after a night like that, it feels like a miracle. Alric breathes in deeply. The scent of dirt, dew, and faintly toasted bread drifts through the air. Someone, somewhere, has already started baking. It smells like possibility. Behind him, Elswith stirs. Not fully awake, just moving. Frigga hops down from her perch and begins pecking the floor like she's auditing it. And for a brief, shining second, nothing is wrong. No fires, no floods, No unbearable heat. Just a village waking up together. A husband breathing in the morning. A world made of bread, brooms, and new beginnings. So if you stir still with me now, listening from wherever you are, eyes closed, heart calm, breath even, you purr part of this too. You survived the heat. And now, you've made it to the morning. Morning doesn't roar to life in this village. It stretches, it yawns, it wakes with its hands still in its pockets. The rhythm is soft. A broom here, a creaking door there, water sloshing gently into a bucket that's seen more summers than some of the people carrying it. Ulrich steps outside, blinking in the fresh light. The sky is wide and pale, and the sun is still too polite to start glaring. For now, it sups just watching, waiting, giving everyone a little time to get used to the idea of today. He walks past Wulfric, who is still asleep in a very committed sprawl beside the well. Sir Gilbert is gone, either off on an early morning mission or hiding somewhere to avoid more poetry. Ulrich doesn't ask. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Editha is of course already halfway through sweeping the square for the second time. Her sleeves are rolled, her eyebrows are furrowed, and her broom is moving like it has something to prove. Morning, Ulrich offers. She replies, which in Editha speak means good morning. You survived. I'm glad. Back in the house, Elswith emerges with her hair in a loose braid and her hands wrapped around a cup of warm barley tea. Frigga follows, already judging the day like she's the head of a feathered council. And that seps when the first child starts running. No reason, no task. Just pure speed, bare feet slapping the earth. Arms flailing, joy wrapped in dust and momentum. Another one follows. Then a third. Within moments the square is filled with the sound of laughter, small feet, and someone yelling, "You can sit, catch me, I said too sweaty," which in fairness is excellent logic. The villagers begin to smile. Slowly, sleepily. The baker waves from his doorway. Flour, already in his beard. Someone's hanging laundry. Someone else is fixing a cartwheel while humming a tune only half remembered. A dog barks, then immediately regrets the effort and lies back down. And just like that, the village is alive again. Not loud, not dramatic, just present. And the memory of the heat, of the stillness, the sweat, the midnight lullabies sung to the stars, is already softening into something almost sweet. A shared story, a night they endured together, a reason to greet each other with a nod that says, "I know, I felt it too." So if your eyes are still closed now, or half open, in that quiet space between sleep and stretch, let this be your morning too. Let it arrive slowly. Let it be enough. Let it remind you you made it. The sun is higher now, but still kind. Not yet the hammer it becomes by midday. It spills over the thatched rooftops in long golden strokes, warming the dew, turning the puddles in the road into mirrors that reflect crooked houses and sleep-heavy eyes. The village hums, not like a machine, but like a memory that's still unfolding. Ulrich walks slowly, nodding to the baker, who hands him the heel of a fresh loaf without a word. That's the kind of thing you earn in a village like this, not with coins, but with years, with shared summers, with stories told while waiting out the heat on someone's shaded porch. He takes the bread, bites into it, and closes his eyes. It's warm, soft, and tastes faintly of honey and charcoal. He doesn't need more than that. Elswith is already gathering herbs from the garden, muttering to herself about the good ones going bitter in this weather. Frigga is pecking at something invisible near the fence, looking triumphant, as if she alone held off the heat with sheer poultry determination. Wulfric has woken up, eyes puffy, hair askew, and is now holding his frog like it's a relic from a religious vision. "He spoke to me," Wulfric says, eyes wide. No one questions it, not after the week they've had. And the children, they've taken over the well, splashing water on each other. filling their wooden cups and pretending they're selling magical potions to ward off future hot nights. 1 cup is 1 copper. 2, if you want your dreams to come with singing goats. There's already a waiting list. Editha has finally stopped sweeping, not because the dust is gone. It never is. But because someone handed her a chair, a biscuit, and a compliment. She grunted and sat down, which for her is a full emotional confession. And all across the village, life doesn't just return, it deepens. Because surviving a hot night like that wasn't just endurance, it was a shared vow. One made without words, just glances, just sweat, just the knowledge that everyone from the blacksmith to the quiet boy who tends the ducks made it too. So if you're still listening, body heavy, breath steady, eyes somewhere between awake and dreaming, let this be your place among them, not watching, belonging. You've walked this whole night with them, felt the heat, smiled through the weariness, held on for morning, and here it is. A slow, golden, ordinary miracle, one that tastes like bread, sounds like distant laughter, and feels a little like hope. The village doesn't celebrate in loud ways. There are no parades, no banners, no grand declarations scribbled onto parchment and nailed to trees. But there's a quiet kind of celebration happening anyway. One you can hear in the soft clatter of wooden bowls, in the scrape of bread being sliced too thick, in the slow, happy groans of people realizing their joints still work after sleeping on dirt, straw, and various rogue vegetables. And Ulrich sits near the water barrel now, dampening a cloth and pressing it to the back of his neck like he's found some rare treasure. Luxury, he mutters to no one. Ellsworth passes him a slice of cucumber that somehow survived the week's meals untouched. He chews it slowly, like it's made of gold. In moments like this, they don't need more than shade, a breeze, and something cool on the tongue. Children are back to running. Only now their games are filled with retellings of the night before. I slept with my feet in the bucket. I saw a firefly land on Wulfric's nose. My mum said the moon looked like a wheel of cheese. And for once the grown-ups don't correct them. They just let the stories spin. Because in a village like this, imagination is its own kind of survival tool. Wulfric is trying to invent a weather prediction system using a stick, a lump of bread, and whatever Gilbert the Frog does before breakfast. He twitched his leg. That means it'll be warm by supper. What if he just needed to stretch? Then we'll all stretch and see what happens. Logic, in this moment, is less important than the ritual of trying. Editha is seated on a stool beneath the oldest tree in the village, sipping something that smells like boiled nettles in mild disapproval. She's already told 3 people to drink more water and 1 person to sit down before you melt into the grass. Her voice carries the weight of wisdom disguised as complaint. And all around, the village hums in the key of recovery. Not rush, not productivity, just slow, shared effort. A loaf needed here, a fence post straightened there. Nothing urgent, nothing loud, just the sound of people remembering that life keeps going, even after the night stretched too long. So if you're still here, nestled under your blanket, or sprawled like a starfish across a cool sheet, take this moment in. Let it wash over you like the first breeze of morning. Let it remind you that simple routines, shared glances, soft laughs, these are victories. They might not look like much, but they matter more than anyone ever writes down. The morning stretches on, and the sun, though brighter now, is still merciful. It warms, but it doesn't punish. Not yet. For a few precious hours, the village exists in a kind of golden suspension, just light, soft chatter, and the slow weaving together of normal. Alric is mending a stool now, one hand holding the wobbly leg, the other trying to remember where he last left the good nails. Not those, Ellsworth says from behind him. Those bend when you breathe near them. He sighs, sets them aside. We'll call them decorative. She doesn't laugh, but her smirk gives her away. In this household, love sounds a lot like correcting each other with a tone just gentle enough not to start an argument. Down the lane, two boys are using a stick and a hoop to chase the sun. That's what they say. Anyway, we're chasing the sun, one yells. To make it tired before it gets hot again. Whether or not it works is irrelevant. What matters is that someone's trying. Frigga is back to full activity. She's marched up and down the garden twice, flapped indignantly at a passing goose, and attempted to sit on Ellsworth's clean laundry. You little furnace, Ellsworth mutters, swatting her away with a bundle of damp linens. Frigga does not move. Frigga does not apologize. Frigga is, as ever, the boss of everything. Wulfric is now setting up an official frog observation post, which consists of a crate, a curtain, and a sign that reads, "Only cool frogs allowed." No one is quite sure what the admission policy is, but Gilbert looks smug, and that's probably all that matters. And Etha, she's picked up her broom again, but this time she's not sweeping. She's using it to point. You get that barrel upright. You tell your goat it can't live in the bread oven. Orders, advice, a few veiled threats, all delivered with the same calm efficiency of someone who knows this village better than the layout of her own home. Around them, the birds sing lazily. A pot simmers in the background. A breeze threads its way through the garden, lifting a few curls of hair, rustling the laundry, reminding everyone that summer doesn't have to shout to be present. And for the villagers who endured the heat, the sweat, the stickiness of a night that clung to their skin and made them question every decision involving wool, this is the reward. Cool air, clean bread, the sound of nothing urgent. So if your breath is still slow, your body heavy with rest, your eyes half-lidded as you listen from under your favorite blanket, or against the seat of a bus that seps just too warm, let this be part of your morning too, because what the villagers have, you have too now. A quiet place, a gentle routine, and a reminder that even the hottest nights always give way to something soft. By late morning, the village is in full rhythm again, not bustling, exactly, but moving. The kind of movement that doesn't rush. The kind that knows there's time for everything that matters and no time wasted on what doesn't. Children play in the dust. Goats argue with fences, and someone somewhere drops a bucket and lets out a curse that sounds more like a song than a warning. Alric finishes fixing the stool. It's a little uneven, but it holds. He sets it near the hearth, wipes his hands, and sits down to admire it. Ellsworth places a mug beside him, barley water, slightly cool, with a few mint leaves floating in it like they're proud of themselves. He takes a sip and sighs the way. Only someone who's not sweating for the first time in 24 hours can. Frigga has taken up residence on top of the woodpile. She surveys the village like she owns stock in every chicken coop. A child offers her a breadcrumb, which she accepts with the quiet arrogance of royalty. Wulfric is now writing a list titled, "Things That Are Better When Cold." So far, it includes soup, feet, frogs, and arguments with your sister. Gilbert is resting in a shallow dish of water under the table, utterly unfazed by fame. Editha, who has been up since before anyone else even considered blinking, finally sits, not because she's tired, but because she's earned it. She's cleaned, directed, insulted, blessed, and mumbled through half the chores of the morning. She sips her tea with the dignity of a saint, and the posture of someone who's already decided she'll scold 2 people before lunch, maybe 3 if someone mentions that the sun is not that bad today. The rest of the village flows gently through its rituals. No panic, no race, just 1 hour folding into the next. Everything a little softer, everything a little more grateful. And even though the heat will come again, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, they're ready now. Not with fans, not with magic, but with each other, with routines, with laughter, with the memory that even the hottest nights pass, eventually. And you, wherever you are, however your day looks, whether your room is warm or cool or somewhere in between, you walked beside them. You've listened through the sweat, the stillness, and the stars. You've arrived with them in the soft light of morning. So let that stay with you. Let the breeze find your face. Let your breath stay easy. And if the night ahead runs warm again, you already know how to make it through. The day rolls on, slow and golden, like a cart with one squeaky wheel and no particular place to be. In the village, no one hurries. They've learned better. Summer teaches you that pace is survival, that rest isn't laziness, it's wisdom earned by sweat and dust, and nights spent lying flat waiting for a breeze that may never come. Alric leans against the garden fence now, arms crossed, watching the clouds roll lazy across the sky. One of them looks like a loaf of bread, another like a chicken doing something it probably shouldn't. That one's you, he mutters to Frigga, who's perched beside him, pecking the fence post like it owes her money. Elswith is inside, sorting herbs on the table, arranging bundles of dried thyme, lavender, and marigold like they're pieces of an old story. Her hands move slowly, gently, placing each one where it belongs, like a quiet spell against whatever tomorrow brings. Wulfric has wandered down to the creek, trousers rolled to the knee, standing ankle-deep in the water as he gives an impromptu sermon to Gilbert. And then the heat came upon us, Brother Frog, and lo, we did not perish. Gilbert blinks twice and stares into the middle distance like a philosopher. A few villagers sit beneath the biggest tree in the center of the green. No one says much, just chewing bits of straw, swatting flies, trading sleepy glances that say, "I see you. I know you made it too." And maybe that's the greatest comfort of all. Not the cool air, not the bread, not even the mint tea, but being seen, being known, being remembered by the people who watched you melt in real time and didn't judge you for it. Even Editha, yes, even she has softened. Just a little. She stands in the doorway of her hut, arms folded, eyes narrowed, but not with disapproval, just scanning the village like a general making sure her troops are accounted for. Still here, she says under her breath. Still whole. And across this quiet, lived-in day, something settles. A memory. A shared knowing. They'll talk about the heat wave, of course. They'll exaggerate it. Embellish. Someone will swear the air itself started boiling. Someone else will claim a fish walked out of the creek just to get dry. And someone will definitely tell the story of how Alric tried to cool off by sitting in the laundry tub and got stuck for an hour. But beneath the jokes, beneath the laughter, will be something stronger. Respect for each other, for the small acts of resilience, for the way a village can bend under the weight of a season and still come up standing. And for you right now, listening, breathing slow, eyes maybe already closed. You're part of that now. You walked through the heat with them, and you stayed long enough to feel it pass. The afternoon leans into the village like an old friend, one that doesn't knock, just slips through the door with a familiar creak and settles into the space between chores and conversation. Everything is slower now, not tired, just content. The kind of slowness you earn. Alric sits with his back against the sun-warmed wall of his home, chewing the last bite of bread, eyes half-lidded. Frigga has dozed off next to him, one foot sticking out in a pose of complete and unearned confidence. Elswith, just inside, hums a song no one's written down, but everyone seems to know. It drifts through the open door like something wrapped in linen and memory. And the village holds all of it, the quiet, the laughter, the leftover heat, now only a ghost on the air. They've endured another night, not with heroism, not with spectacle, but with the small, steady acts of staying, of not giving up, of making room for one another. The children nap under the shade of the tree where the goats usually fight. The goats, in an unusual act of courtesy, have given them space. Wulfric is sketching something in the dirt, possibly a map, possibly a frog-themed cooling system. Gilbert, beside him, remains judgmental. Etta has returned to her chair. She's not giving instructions. Not right now. Just watching, noticing. There's a little softness at the corners of her mouth that she'd deny if you pointed it out. But it's there. It always is. Once you've made it to the other side of hard things. And that's what these days are made of, really. Not big wins, but moments. A bucket filled. A joke shared. A dream remembered just long enough to tell someone over stew. Because life in the village isn't about the storms or the droughts or the heat that wraps itself around your ribs and squeezes. It's about who you sweat next to, who hands you the last cold crust without a word, who fans you with a straw hat even when they're hotter than you are. It's about survival made beautiful by community. And maybe you, lying there, wrapped in the quiet hum of this world, needed to hear that surviving isn't set small. That rest is a reward. That even now, with nothing urgent to do, and nowhere pressing to be, you're part of something whole. The sun begins its long, slow slide behind the hills, dipping low enough now to cast everything in that deep golden hush. People call the quiet hour. Shadows stretch. Light softens, and the village settles again, as if exhaling all at once. Ulrich, still against the wall, eyes the sky like he's trying to guess if the next night will be as hot. He hopes not. He's already planning which bucket he'll claim if it is. Elswith appears beside him, sits down with a thud, and leans her head on his shoulder like she's trying to steal a little of his shade. "Think it'll be cooler tonight?" she asks. He shrugs. "We're due for a miracle." Frigga is, against all logic, napping again. This time on top of the woodpile, balanced with the kind of poise that suggests she was royalty in a past life and is merely tolerating her current chicken form. Children begin to stir from their naps, rubbing eyes and complaining about nothing in particular. A few wander over to the well, not because they're thirsty, but because it's the best place to toss pebbles and shout theories about which ones are magic. The shiny ones float, one yells. "That's because you threw it on the grass," another replies. Wulfric walks past with a new sign for his frog sanctuary. It reads, in bold charcoal, "Cool frogs only, no exceptions." No one knows what would happen if a warm frog tried to enter. It's best not to ask. And Editha? She hasn't moved from her chair. But she's watching it all, not with judgment today, but with something else. Maybe pride, maybe nostalgia, maybe just the deep contentment that comes from watching the people you live with, complain with, suffer with, sweat beside, find their rhythm again. Because this is the truth. Few ever tell about peasants, about villages, about the people who live without gold or glory. They survive, again and again, not because they have to, but because they know how. They make routines out of chaos. They turn sweat into stories. They gather around barrels, around bread, around each other, and they endure. And you, still lying there, eyes heavy, heart quiet, drifting like a feather across this dream of a day. You belong here too. You've listened, stayed, survived something of your own, perhaps. And you still made it to the golden hour. Dinner in the village isn't grand. It isn't served in courses, no trumpets, no tapestries, no goblets clinking under candlelight. It's one pot, shared between many, ladled into mismatched bowls that have survived 3 generations, and a goat-related accident no one likes to talk about. But somehow it tastes like everything you need after a long, warm day. Ulrich sits cross-legged in the dirt outside his home, bowl in hand, a few pieces of chopped onion to whatever root vegetable the garden was willing to surrender today. Elswith passes him a crust of bread that's more chew than fluff, and he accepts it like it's a royal offering. "To surviving another one," he mutters. "Barely," she replies, and taps her spoon against his in what can only be described as the peasant version of a toast. Frigga is circling the group like a knight on patrol, hoping for dropped crumbs, declaring herself both watchdog and taste tester. A child tries to give her a carrot end. She takes offense. Chickens have standards. Nearby, Wulfric tells a half-true story about how the frog once warned him of a coming storm. He twitched just before it rained. That's prophecy. You also twitch before you sneeze, someone replies. Maybe you're the prophet. Wulfric gasps, as if struck by divine revelation. Editha is seated on her porch with her bowl resting on her knees. She eats slowly, like she's rationing flavor, or patience, or both. When a neighbor offers her extra salt, she waves it off. Doesn't need it, she says. It's already seasoned with heat and regret. A pause. Then, almost a smile. And as the sky melts into that rich, deep blue of a world finally cooling down, something unspoken passes between the villagers. Not a secret. Not even a shared thought. Just presence. That quiet, unshakable sense that they've made it through something together. And even if no one builds statues of them or writes songs about their sweat-slicked nights, they remember. They remember lying flat on the floor, waiting for the air to move. They remember laughter in the dark. They remember how even bad bread tastes good when you're eating it beside someone else who made it through. So if you're still here with them, with us, eyes soft, breath deep, letting your body ease further into whatever surface is holding you, this is your moment too. Not flashy, not loud, but real. And you've earned it. The bowls are empty now, scraped clean with bits of crust, wiped with fingers, shared between neighbors without ceremony. There's no applause, just full bellies, soft conversation, and the quiet kind of tired that settles not just in the body but behind the eyes, like a candle flickering low, not out, but ready to be. Alric leans back, arms behind him, staring at the sky. The first stars are starting to peek through, faint, uncertain, but there. That one looks like a chicken, he says. Ellsworth follows his finger. That's a goat. That's a chicken who thinks it's a goat. Frigga squawks indignantly nearby. The universe evidently is listening. Wulfric is curled up beside a pile of firewood, a blanket draped over him, and Gilbert's water dish, placed with ceremonial care beside his head. Frogwatch 2.0 begins at moonrise. He mumbles, half asleep. No warm frogs allowed. No one dares test his resolve. The children are finishing their last games of the evening. One more run around the garden, one more argument about whose rock is magic, one more promise that this time they'll actually go to bed when asked. Eventually, someone carries a yawning bundle inside and the rest follow, feet dragging, eyes wide but heavy. And Editha, she's still there, still in her chair, still watching the sky like she's trying to measure the stars for exact alignment. When someone offers her a blanket, she takes it. Only because it's not itchy, she says. Which, for her, is basically a love letter. The village is quiet again, not asleep yet, but close. Doorways lit with one last candle, a few final words traded in low tones. The breeze now regular, cool, steady. It carries the scent of dry earth and clean hay and something else. Peace, maybe, or simply the absence of discomfort. And that seps when it hits you. This is what survival becomes. A shared story. A bowl of stew. A sky you can name shapes in. No one writes it down. No one gives a speech. But if you pay attention, if you're here for it, truly here, you can feel it settle in your bones. You made it. They made it. And even if the next hot night comes sooner than you sussed like, you now know, you'll get through it. Together, the night returns as it always does, not rushing in, not sneaking either, just arriving like it was here all along, waiting for its turn. The stars have thickened, scattered across the sky like someone spilled a basket of grain and didn't bother to sweep it up. The moon rises slow, heavy, round, less like a light, more like a witness. Inside their little hut, Alric and Ellsworth move with quiet familiarity. No words needed, Just the rhythm of evening. Bucket rinsed, cot straightened, candle lit. He stretches his back with a groan. She braids her hair loosely the way her mother taught her. Frigga hops up onto her usual corner of the blanket, fluffs, turns once and settles like she pays rent. Ulrich sits on the edge of the bed. Think tonight'll be hot? He asks. Ellsworth doesn't answer right away. She opens the door instead, lets the air speak first. It's cool, cool enough, enough to sleep, enough to hope. Not as hot as last night, she says, which, in this village, is a blessing worthy of celebration. Outside, the last few voices are winding down. A quiet song hums through the dark, no words, just sound low and soft like the world itself is rocking someone to sleep. A shutter creaks closed. A goat lets out one final dramatic sigh. Even Wulfric, curled up beside his frog bucket, is still. Editha places one more sprig of dried lavender near her bed, mutters something about better dreams, and lies down with the kind of sigh only earned by those who outlive hard things again and again. And as sleep begins to roll through the village like a soft tide, the memories of the last hot night begin to fade, just a little. The stickiness, the stillness, the quiet worry that maybe the breeze wouldn't come back. All of it fades behind what came after. The laughter, the cool cloth, the jokes, the bread, the frog diplomacy. And that sips what stays. That sips what always stays. So if you, still here with me tucked in your own bed or nestled into a couch, feeling the weight of your own long day easing off your shoulders, let this be your second night in the village. No heat now. No need to brace. Just a slow breath in, and a slower one out. You earned the quiet. The village doesn't sleep all at once. It drifts into it, some with a whisper, some with a thud, some with a quiet argument about who took up all the space on the straw mat, followed by laughter, followed by snores. The world gets softer, not silent, just less. Ulrich lies on his back now, eyes open, staring at the dark that feels gentler than the one from the night before. Ellsworth is already asleep beside him, her breathing slow, her body relaxed in that rare way that only happens when the air is cool enough not to fight. He doesn't say anything, just watches the ceiling, listens to the familiar nighttime chorus of his home, the creak of a beam, the flap of the curtain, the soft thud of Frigga kicking in her sleep. He lets his thoughts wander. Not deep ones, not worries, just little things. The smell of the bread, the look Ellsworth gave him when he handed her the bigger half, the way the candle flickered like it had a secret before it finally died. Outside, Wulfric mumbles in his sleep, something about honor and frogs. Gilbert makes no sound, but he's there, watching, judging, loving, probably in his own amphibian way. And Editha? Still as the stones her house is built on. Her hands folded across her chest, face turned slightly toward the window, as if daring the breeze to come in and try something. Everything is in its place. Not perfect, not polished, but true. And if you, lying there now, feel your own breath sinking with theirs, if your limbs have softened, your thoughts grown quiet, and your body finally feels like it can stay still without a fight, that sips it. That sips the feeling they fought for. That sips the reward of a hard night, well survived. Not fireworks, not parades, just peace. The kind that doesn't announce itself. It just shows up when you're too tired to pretend anymore. Sleep folds around the village like the last page of a well-read book. Every house is quiet now. Every lantern's glow has been replaced by moonlight slipping through wooden slats and thatched seams. Even the night creatures, crickets, owls, and curious beetles move with reverence, careful not to disturb what's been earned. Ulrich finally closes his eyes, exhaling slow, like he's letting go of something he didn't even realize he was carrying. His hand rests, just close enough to Elswith's that they'd find each other without needing to look. There's no grand farewell to wakefulness, just that quiet drop into a deeper stillness, like sinking into the softest part of memory. The village breathes. Huts filled with slow, even rhythms, snoring, soft turning, the occasional dream mutter. Somewhere, a child laughs in her sleep. Somewhere else, a dog kicks once, chasing something in a dream he won't remember. Even Wulfric is quiet now, cradling a rolled-up tunic like its treasure. Gilbert remains utterly motionless in his dish, the high priest of peace. And Editha, yes, even she, sleeps with a smile so faint, you might miss it if the moon wasn't paying attention. Maybe she's dreaming of order, or maybe of mornings without chores, or maybe, just maybe, of a village that keeps holding itself together, one slow, stubborn, beautiful day at a time. Above them, the stars hold their posts. The sky is clear, as if rinsed clean by survival itself. There is no wind, but there is presence. The kind that wraps you up, that says, "Stay, you Seps. No one needs anything from you right now." And you, still here with us, still breathing slow, still resting in the story. Let it all fall away now. The heat, the noise, the spinning world. Let the village hold you, like it held them, like it held itself, like it always will. The hours pass quietly now, slipping by without urgency, like a river moving under fog. The night is deep, but not heavy, cool but not cold. It holds the village in a cradle of quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't ask questions, doesn't leave space for worry, just being. Alric and Elswith sleep without stirring, the kind of sleep that only follows exhaustion and relief. The kind you don't fall into, you arrive at. Their breathing matches the rhythm of the dark. Even Frigga has stopped twitching. Her little body, puffed into a feathered ball, gives one slow sigh. That's all. Outside, the square is still. A few embers glow in the fire pit near Wulfric's hut, where someone forgot to smother them. But even the fire knows not to misbehave tonight. Wulfric, wrapped in a blanket that's more patch than fabric, clutches it like a trophy. Gilbert, eternal, continues his sacred stillness. In the distance, a breeze stirs the edge of the forest. Nothing threatening, just a reminder that the world goes on, that even while they sleep, life continues with a gentle pace. The trees whisper things no one hears. Maybe stories, maybe secrets, maybe just the quiet truth that everything cycles and everything comes back around. Editha doesn't move, but in her dream she sweeps an endless floor that never gets dusty, while a line of chickens follows behind her, wearing bonnets and singing off-key. And in the dream she doesn't scold them, she just smiles. And so the village rests, together, not in rows, not in order, but in unity. Every home holding someone who held on. Every bed containing a body that bent but didn't break. Because this was never just a story about surviving heat. It was about enduring the ordinary, about finding rhythm in discomfort, and choosing, again and again, not to face it alone. So you, lying there now, drifting, floating, breathing like the world finally said, you can stop now. Know this, you are part of this village. You are part of this night. And you have made it through. The stars begin to fade now, slowly, reluctantly, like they know their watch is ending, and they're not quite ready to leave. The sky softens, turning from ink to charcoal, from charcoal to ash, and just at the edges, barely visible, a whisper of blue begins to grow. Alric shifts in his sleep, not because he's waking, just because the night is letting go of him. Elswith sighs, still curled in the same position she fell into hours ago, wrapped in dreams too light to name. Frigga doesn't move, which is how you know everything is still all right. Outside, the first bird calls, a single note, small and hopeful, like it's checking to see if the world is ready. No one answers yet, but it's enough. Wulfric, tangled in his blanket, stirs once and mumbles something about soup. Gilbert blinks slowly, solemn and wise. As always, the wind comes back, gentle, like a friend who stayed the whole time, and only now speaks to say goodbye. It lifts the curtains, brushes across sleeping faces, carries away the last heat, the last worry, the last whisper of yesterday's discomfort. Editha stretches in her sleep. She'll never admit it, but even she dreams sweeter after a night like this one. And the village, it breathes, together, at peace, at rest. And you, still here, still with us, still listening from your bed, your couch, your corner of the world. You've made it too, through every part, through the heat and the laughter, through the stillness, the frogs, the jokes, the dreams. You've walked with them. You've laid still with them. And now you sleep with them, deep, safe, and unbothered. The story is over. The night is nearly done. And you are exactly where you need to be. Good night. Sleep well. And we'll see you again the next time the stars come out.